Hello, and welcome to the Everyday Fi podcast, the show that dives into the stories of everyday people on the path to financial independence. Today, I'm going to be speaking with CJ, and let me just say two words: BattleBots. This episode with her is chock full of fun, tips and tricks, actionable steps to start a side hustle, deep discussions on having kids, and the ever-present one more year syndrome that our community and anyone wanting to retire tends to slip into. We talk a lot about fear and overcoming that fear, and CJ has the realization that she's actually a lot closer to financial independence and retiring early than she thought. So tune in for a deep dive into CJ's financial independence journey. Thanks for joining me today. I'll be chatting with CJ, who I met at the Fire in Vegas event back in April. And she's actually part of the Choose a Fi admin team and then also works with Jillian Johnsrud on her Retire Often podcast. So yeah, CJ, hey, how are you? Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm glad to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm based in Minnesota. I'm a wife with two kids, 2 and 4, and we're expecting our third. So I know, exciting.
Congratulations. I did not. Okay, everybody who's listening, I literally went, because I did not know that. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah, we're super excited. People who have two kids, once you get past that threshold, everybody's, I can't believe you're going for the third. But yeah, we're now past that. It's too late.
There's no going back at this point.
Right. Yep. We're now doing zone defense, is what everybody calls it. But yeah, my current job, I am a B2B marketing person for a manufacturing company. And as you mentioned in the intro, I have a ton of side hustles, a couple of them being marketing consultants for podcasts, as well as some landscaping companies. So a wide variety of marketing consultants, since that's my passion.
That's awesome. Yeah, before we hit record, we were talking about all of the side hustles that CJ does. And I mean, dog walker, landlord, have a board game. Okay, run robot combat events. What is that? You have to say more about that one because
Okay.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So my husband and I run combat robot events. So are you familiar with BattleBots?
Okay, so I'm familiar with the
Like,
like 90s game with the like bots that like punch each other and then one of their heads goes up. I forget what that's
yeah,
called. Is that battle bots? I don't know. Did I just
that
age
is,
myself?
I think that's Robobot.
Okay.
So not that.
Okay. Darn.
So the best way I can describe it is people build 1 pound or 3 pound like RC cars with weapons, like spinning weapons that they then drive and demolish other robots. So there's a large TV show called BattleBots on like Discovery, or I think it used to be a different channel back when we were kids. But my husband and I got into this back in 2019. He wanted to build these robots and compete. And the only place for us to compete was in Connecticut. And that's a 20-hour drive for us, which is insane. So we started hosting events locally so we could compete and build and fight robots locally. So we've been in business for about a year, almost a year and a half now, hosting events and leagues and tournaments. And then we also sell parts for people to create their own robots. And we host workshops for kids to build their own robots that they then can fight and destroy and build and stuff.
Okay, I love all of this. That you're teaching kids to make fighter robots that with weapons and stuff. I think that's so fun. It brings me back to being a 90s kid when you could just do stuff that was dangerous and nobody cared. Okay, I want to know more about like how did you go about starting an event like this? Did you find a space? Did you lock into a community? Like how did that work? If somebody wants to do this in their own community and they also don't live in Connecticut or Minnesota, like how would they get started?
We are part of the Midwest Robot Combat Association, the MRCA. And we can put the links to this and our website in the show notes. But basically, they have a Discord of all sorts of combat robot builders in the Midwest. And there are other regions out there. But essentially, we started with hosting. So I posted a message on Facebook to our local neighborhood group. And I said, I need a space. We want to host a combat robot event. We have an arena, but I need a space. And so a local bar said, well, I have a basement that we host like birthday parties and things like that. You could use that. And so we hosted the event in the basement of this bar, had 16 combat robot like competitors come in and fight. And it built from there. Somebody at that event came to watch because they were interested. They brought up another local legion that we could do it at. So we hosted events there for 32 competitors then at that point, and we outgrew that space. And so now we're hosting at a local armory and having, I think our last event had 64 competitors total.
Wow. And an
Yeah.
armory is so like on brand for robot combat. So how often are you hosting these? And then you said there were 64 people. What's the average usually of how many combat robots there are?
Yeah. So we are hosting these roughly quarterly. And we actually have expanded beyond Minnesota. We host events here in near Minneapolis, where we're based. And then we also host them in Chicago. And actually at the end of this month, we're recording in June, we are hosting an event in Michigan. So we're helping other people build out their robot events as well. And each event, depending on the space and the location, we're seeing anywhere from 16 3-pound beetle weight robots to 32 or 48 ant weight robots. A typical competitor maybe will bring 2 robots for themselves, but we actually have a lot of father, son, daughter, like combos of families coming to compete. And so a family of 3 could have maybe 4 to 5 robots that they're bringing.
Do you have weight classes for the robots? And I'm sorry if people are listening to this, like, when are we getting to the personal finance part? I'm sorry, but this is super cool to me. So I just want to know more.
Yeah, so we do 2 different weight brackets for our events. To back up and give some general history on combat robots, there's this fairy weight, which is 150 grams, so a very small robot, ant weight, which is 1 pound, beetle weight, which is 3 pound. And then we jump up to 12-pound robots. And then 30-pound robots are the main hobbyist style robots. So my husband and I started off building 12-pound robots, and now we're in this 1 and 3 pound where, because the arenas that you're housing them in for safety needs to be a certain size and a certain safety requirement because things are flying, things are catch on fire, all of that. We host 1 pound and 3 pound robots. But then for BattleBots, the large one, it is 250-pound robots. So very large.
Yeah, but they have Discovery or whatever channel they're on budget, so they can have the 250-pound bots. Okay, so does the 12-pound and 30-pound, do they have like a cute name like the fairy and the ant? Those so cute.
So the 12-pound is a hobby weight, and then the 30-pound is a featherweight robot.
The 30, the heaviest one is featherweight. Is it because it's featherweight compared to the 250-pound duders?
I
Yeah.
I have no idea
Okay.
on the history of that piece. No, I
Yeah,
don't.
I'm super fascinated by this. Don't worry, audience, I'm gonna move on. But CJ, you and I need to talk more about this offline because this is awesome. And I'm gonna definitely go to your website and watch videos and stuff. Okay, so you have so many side hustles. The ones that you came up with just before we hit recorder 6, and then you have your actual 9 to 5, and then you have 2 kids and a third on the way. How the heck do you do that? How are you doing all of this at the same time?
So that is a great question. A lot of it has become far more passive. So being a landlord my husband handles most of any of the main tasks. And for the most part, too, I am fortunate enough that I am the main breadwinner and he stays home with our kids and manages all of our side hustles as well as watching our kids. So that's how we're lucky enough to be able to do all of these side hustle things and manage all of the other areas. The landlord piece, he handles the majority of that. I do most of the administrative contract updates, things like that. But he mows the lawn, does any of the handyman fixes, that kind of thing at our rental. And then for our board game, this was during COVID. I mean, you weren't doing anything. And it was before I only had one kid at that point. So I had a lot more free time. But so that's when we were doing a lot of board game nights, hanging out with our individual cohort group. And so that's when we developed the board game. And at this point, it's only responding to orders. So if somebody places an order for our board game, then we ship that out. That's it. We went through the entire Kickstarter process for that. But yeah, that one's pretty much done as of 2 years ago. And it's just the passive income of responding to orders and customers. And that's the same with the Etsy store. So I have a small Etsy store where I designed different cards and Mother's Day gift ideas and things like that, different printables. And that again, you designed it once when you're feeling inspiration and you post it up and that's it. And you're just responding to customers' questions and orders, and it doesn't take up that much time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I have several questions. I'm going to start with the Etsy store because I think this is a little bit easy to answer. How many orders do you get from your Etsy store? Do you have to market it or are you getting just organic orders? So it's like a set it and forget it thing?
So for me, it's been a set it and forget it thing. I started off Gold City Ventures. Are you familiar with the Fire Drill podcast? This was like 3 or 4 years ago.
All of this sounds vaguely familiar, but please, yeah, give our audience some details.
Yeah. So for the Fire Drill podcast, Julie was the podcast host and she's like our age. And so this podcast hasn't been out for, I think, 2 years. She stopped when she had a child. But I was super interested in that podcast. And she mentioned that she had a side hustle on e-printables. And so I attended the Gold City Ventures like training course on printables and all of that. And now that's like her main business. So she stopped doing podcasting for the fire piece and now focuses on Etsy stores and how to promote and do all of that. So I followed that training. I started the creation of a couple designs and that's where I left it. So I'm not making a lot of money by any means. This is all things that I created 2 years ago, 3 years ago when I had far more time.
I want to put a link in the podcast to that training that you took because I think that some people might be interested in doing a set it and forget it side hustle. Okay, so my second set of questions are about your board game because I want to know what's it called? What are the aims? How do you play it? What are the themes? I got to know more.
So the board game is called Captain's Log Crisis Detected, and it's a 3 to 5 player board game. Deals a lot more with like general table talk and going through and convincing people to attack other people. So the premise of the game is you have 5 ships. You are a captain of 5 ships. And there are different crises that are happening that you need to fix on your ships. Or you're attacking other people with these crises. And you need to repair them with your crew members. And so you can either choose to assist other people, your competitors, with helping them with it, giving them a crew member, or you can watch their ship explode. And so the goal of the game is to have the most ships. The person that once all 5 ships have exploded on one of the people's boards, the game is over. And everybody else has certain values under each of their ships. And you tally those numbers up to find the winner. So it's definitely, well, you attacked me last time, or I helped you. Fun, easy game for anybody that's, I would say, 7 and up.
That sounds really fun. And I think you said before we started recording that you're going to get me a link in case anybody wants to order the game, right? All right. So we're going to put that in the show notes. Okay, cool. Let's finally get to the money topic, what everybody's been waiting for. A lot of my previous episodes, I started with the FI journey about like, how did you find financial independence? But I actually want to start earlier than that about your money story and how you were raised with money. So, what's one of your earliest money memories?
So I don't know if this is like the earliest memory, but one that sticks so vividly in my mind is sitting down at the kitchen table with my dad, and he is teaching me how to in my savings book. Like back in the day, every checkbook had their ledger thing, every savings account had their ledger. And that's exactly what we did. Every time we deposited money in our savings account, or once a month when we get interest on our savings, we would have to update the ledger. So we would sit down and I would have to learn to write it out and figure that out with him. So that's generally the earliest memory I have with it, but it's always been related to savings.
I think that's cool that your dad taught you so young about that because I think when my dad taught me about balancing a checkbook, it was when I had already overdrafted like 3 times when I was like 16. And my dad was like, "What are you doing?" So, and I was like, "Well, nobody told me how to do this." So it's cool that your dad was able to show you early on. How did your parents talk about money between each other? And did they talk about it with you at all or around you at all?
Yeah, we were fairly open with money, but for the most part, it was a lot around like how to handle money and save money. So we were very frugal in how we handled money. I don't think we were ever in a bad situation, but it always felt like we were saving for something large. We didn't do a lot of family vacations or travels or buying a lot of the name brand things because we were always saving money for something. And so we would talk about money a little bit in that aspect. I don't know. We didn't talk about investing or like how to do any of those things. It was strictly like the basics of here's your savings account. You're putting money in every week, every paycheck, whatever it was. Here is your checking account. You need to balance and write every transaction that you're doing into the ledger. My dad still sits down on like a weekly basis and balances his checkbook, writes it out in the ledger. And that's one thing that I think from the general talking about money and how we're in the FI community, we talk a lot about money. And thinking back, comparatively, we didn't talk a lot about money, but it was always there. Like my dad was sitting at the kitchen table every week doing the ledger and balancing his checkbook and saying how much money we had, like we had enough money for this or that or all of those types of things, but it wasn't getting into the plan of what we were going to do with it. It was just like we're just saving it for the next thing that never comes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Do you remember what your parents saved for, or were they just saving to save?
It's strictly, I think, saving to save. Like for the most part, they didn't believe or they don't believe in debt. So whenever they would buy a new vehicle, or I don't think they've ever bought a new vehicle. I think it's always been used vehicles, but they would buy it all in cash. When they purchased their farm, they had the mortgage, but their entire goal has been to pay off that mortgage like as fast as they possibly could. And so for the most part, I assume it's been saving for retirement, but it was just like you just needed to save the money because you will need it for something someday. And they didn't believe in credit cards or doing any of that stuff. I've slowly been changing their mind, and my mom now uses like cash rewards and points and things like that. But it's been a long process.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me that there's something there about saving just to save rather than saving for a goal or saving for something you value. It's, yeah, I find that really interesting, which leads me to like, how did this kind of upbringing affect your philosophies around money as an adult, do you think?
So for me personally, and we touched on this at the fire event we were at in Vegas, but I actually have an adverse reaction or a heavy negative reaction to spending money because of this upbringing. I was telling you before were recording this, like I can't even buy a Coke from a gas station and spend $2 without like feeling bad about spending that money. Like I could be saving that $2. Whereas my husband grew up in a different environment, a different culture around spending money, and he has no problem with spending if there's value and meaning to what it is. And so it's been one of those things where, I mean, we hit on it with all of my side hustles and like the need to earn money is one of the areas that one of the things that we talked about with fire in general and attending that event was like, what are the stories that you're telling yourself? And for me, it's always been like, once I hit our FI number, like I will feel more comfortable and confident and allow for spending. But we're at Coast Fi today, and I'm still not comfortable with buying a Coke. Like, how I don't think I'll ever be that comfortable without confronting that history and like my philosophy around money and saving.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that's like a blessing and a burden all in one, because the fact that you save so well means you're going to reach early financial independence probably, but it also sounds like it's limiting your life today because you are so afraid of spending on even just a Coke. Although I commend you for coming out to the Fire in Vegas event, which Vegas is very much not FI. And we all stayed at the very nice New York hotel. And so I commend you for you spent money on that. So good job.
I
And
used a lot of rewards points.
nice. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I love those hacks. I also did for my plane ticket. So yay for mileage points. I really hope they don't get rid of those. I heard that some people in Washington are going after the credit card rewards points. And so I'm curious how that's going to pan out. But that's a different topic for another day. It's interesting that people will go in the complete opposite direction and be spenders because they grew up in a family that never allowed them to spend anything. And so they had that, oh, crunch the numbers, save every penny. And they're like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm an adult now. It's my money. I want to spend it. And so I think that's really interesting how your upbringing just affects exactly what you're going to do as an adult. And you really have to work through some of that. I mean, I am very gung ho about money and psychology being very linked because money is the root of everything that we need and want and desire today. Like money is that tool to do that. And so I feel like it is very linked to, you hear the net worth and self worth type of sayings, like your net worth is not your self worth. And yeah, it's a lot of, it's security. Like your upbringing sounds like security was the biggest value that your family had. And you also have that now as an adult.
I completely agree. So my sister and I are very close in age. You met her at the event in Vegas. She is the complete opposite. She, to your point, is the spender where she doesn't think twice about it because we saved so much as kids that she's like, I don't want to be like that. And it's completely not like that. She'll buy whatever she wants when she wants and not feel that. So it's interesting how you can be brought up in the same environment and have two completely different mindsets.
Yeah, absolutely. Which leads me to how you found the financial independence movement and what drew you to it. Was it this background that you had, or was there like some sort of inspiration outside of your background in childhood?
So I found out about FI in 2018. I was leaving my first real corporate job. I was there for 9 years and started moving to a new company. And one of my mentors, when I first started there, I was saying goodbye to her and telling her about like where we had moved since we were in different cities at that point and what we were doing with living in our duplex and what I found out was then house hacking and like saving all of this money. And she's, oh, are you doing the FI thing? And I was like, I don't know what that is. What is the FI thing? And that's when she turned me on to the Choose FI podcast, and I dove into understanding investing. So I didn't even know about like beyond your 401k and like the importance of having that. I didn't even know that was really a thing and how to do that. Like my learning of the stock market was when I was in like ninth grade and you did the stock market game or whatever as part of your economics and finance class. And that's what I thought it was at that point. And I had no idea how to buy stocks or do any of that when I first started. So I didn't really get into anything beyond like my 401k for savings until well past 2018.
Wow, yeah. So how old were you in 2018?
I was 28.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
You were still young, right? So that's about when I started too. And that's when I started investing altogether, even in an employer plan, because I hadn't invested at all before that. I know that sometimes people are like, oh, I started so late because I was 24 instead of 22, or oh, I should have invested when I was 8 years old. And at least that's how I feel sometimes. I'm like, man, why didn't I start investing when I was in my early 20s? But 28 is still young. 38 is young when it comes to investing. You have so much time and you've already reached Coast Fi. It's only been 6 years and you're at Coast Fi already. I mean, dang, that's amazing. And okay, so what kind of investing did you do after that? If it was outside your 401k, how did you first start stumbling in? Did you buy like single stocks? Did you right away buy a total stock market index fund? Or how did you start with that?
To back up a little bit, I think the general advice I had from my mom when I first got my real job was I saved 10% of my salary in my 401k. And so I never knew anything beyond that. And so that is what I think ultimately led to such high growth and exponential at this point. But really, when I found out about financial independence, it was more about figuring out how we could earn more. And so my husband and I already had our duplex, and we were looking down that real estate route of investing and eventually becoming FI that way through the cash flow of our rental properties. And as we have further grown up and tried other side hustles, and he's owned a couple different businesses himself, we've really started to step back in our activities and doing more of the general investing and index funds and things like that versus going the real estate route.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's really great. When are you targeting reaching full FI based on how you're saving now and how you saved in the past? And I know you said you only saved like 10% in your 401k, but would you still say that helped you in your goal of reaching FI?
Oh, yeah. So I was doing 10% when I started my first job. So I think by the time that like I understood that there were other routes, I was at like a 15 or 16% savings in my 401k. And when my husband and I started to realize that like we wanted to look at more of this real estate route or entrepreneurship route, we really needed to cut back our my 401k saving and use that for investing in these other opportunities. And overall, when it comes to like our FI date or like where we're at from that side of things, I think we could be FI within the next 2 to 3 years if we figured out how to better access our other money or continue to invest in our entrepreneurship opportunities, which I guess doesn't make us FI because we're still working on our own businesses and like the side hustles. But to me, now being part of the FI movement for so long, it's not necessarily about whether or not you have a job. It's about having the flexibility to do what you want with your income. And so to me, FI for us would mean that I wouldn't have my 9 to 5 job where I am required to be there and required to work those set of hours. and do that piece. So I find a lot of value and personal enjoyment out of working in general. And so I don't see that I would retire by any means. I really like a lot of the side hustle work that I do. And so ultimately, if that became where that money could cover all of our main expenses, to me, that would be five for us. And that I think we're within 2 years. Is probably, we could probably do it today, but I'm just too nervous to make that leap. So I'm saying like we're 2 years out.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. And plus, you probably want to plan it if you're going to pull the trigger. Even if you already have side hustles, it's still not a B2B marketing salary level, right? As somebody who works in product management in a B2B company, I know it's hard to let go of those big salaries. Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Do you want to learn how to set powerful goals and invest wisely? Have you been yearning to quit your 9 to 5? Then my workbook, Your Journey to Freedom, is for you. This workbook is your roadmap to financial success. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out, it's designed to help you define your goals, create a plan, and take action towards building wealth. Inside, you'll find practical exercises and tools that will help you identify your short, medium, and long-term financial goals, develop a personalized investment strategy tailored to these goals and your risk tolerance, track your progress and stay accountable to your financial objectives. Plus, there's bonus content like a quiz to test what you learn and a budget worksheet. With easy-to-follow instructions and insightful prompts, this workbook will empower you to make confident decisions and stay focused on your financial journey. Don't let another day go by without taking charge of your financial life. Invest in yourself and your future with the Your Journey to Freedom workbook. Order now and start turning your dreams into reality. Visit my website at everyday-fi.com/guides to get your copy today and start your journey to financial freedom. There's FI and then there's FIRE, right? There's people who really do quit their job and then just go like travel and do whatever they want and don't actually pull in any sort of income. And that type of financial independence is awesome, but that's not the only financial independence that has to be there, right? I like that we're bringing in the idea of, yeah, you can still work, but now you're working for yourself. You're making your dreams come true rather than another company's dream come true, which is what I always say. I'm tired of making other people's dreams come true. I want to make mine come true. So that's what it sounds like you want to do. But I want to know outside of your side hustles, what post-fi life is going to look like for you and your husband and your kids.
Yeah. So working on the exercises from the Extraordinary Life, the event that you and I were at together, it really has come down to like waking up every day, not with an alarm clock, and allowing time for us to hang out with our kids and do fun adventures. My son really loves being outside camping, hiking, biking, like all of those activities. And we're trying to bring our daughter into that same environment and being far more outdoorsy. And so being able to spend the mornings together doing that and then taking a couple hours throughout the day. Ideally, I mentioned this in like my ideal state is only working 4 meaningful hours a day. And that's it. Because personally, I need that fulfillment. I know a lot of parents and especially moms get a lot of enjoyment out of hanging out with their kids and watching them grow and develop. And that's not me. I feel a little bit bad saying that and having a little bit of mom guilt there, but there are others out there that are like me that don't get that fulfillment. And I get that through the work that I do in the creation and like the fun analytical pieces that help me feel valued as a person by myself. So I want to have that full balance of being able to have time to spend with my kids and watch them grow and do fun activities, but also being able to have that personal fulfillment side too and doing that work and not having to force it all into 2 hours in the evening or like going to the zoo on the weekend. It's insanity. And so my husband takes our kids since he stays home with him, takes him to the zoo at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday. Nobody is there. I want to do that instead and have it be far more enjoyable.
Yeah. And because right now you don't get to go because you have to work, right? Unless you're like, hey, y'all, I have an appointment that I have to do. You just go to the zoo. Yeah. That's just a hack from me to you if you want to do that. Just say you have a hair appointment or something.
But yeah, you're joking about making the appointment, but that's really it. Like, you need to have those excuses to take an hour out of your workday to do something fun. And I started a new role about 6 months ago. Before that, like last summer, I would take 40 minutes additional to my lunch and go for a walk with our kids after lunch because I now am fortunate enough to work at home and work remote. Whereas in my new role, I don't get that time. Immediately after lunch, I am back at my desk, like working hard immediately versus having some of that flexibility to be able to enjoy a walk after lunch with the kids and having that. It's ultimately that flexibility and being able to do the things during the day at the right times instead of restricting it all to 5 to 7 because you're going home from work, picking up your kids, making dinner, like doing all of the required bedtime routine things. There's no time for a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. And I hear you for wanting to have your own things and not just be completely enamored with your kids 24/7. I personally don't have kids, but I do know the early stages of the feminist movement in the 40s and 50s. Housewives at that time were like, all I do is give everything to my family, to my husband and my kids, and I have nothing for me. And so that's what kind of started that revolution of women wanting to be able to go and work and opt out of having kids and like having their own lives. And then on the dad side of it, there were men who were saying, I would get home so late from work because I worked like in a city and then had to drive back to my house that I wouldn't even get to see my kids because they would be asleep when I left the house and asleep when I get home. So I only ever see them on weekends. And I'm hoping that's not how today is, but I can see why you would want balance and be able to just work 4 hours a day or even the 4 hours a week. I think it's Tim Ferriss, right, who says the 4 hour work week.
4 hour work week.
And my boss and I today were talking about how awesome it would be to have a 4 day work week because having those weekends that are a little bit longer to give us that time back with our families would be amazing. So I'm here for that. I don't have kids, but I'm so here for that. And it makes me wonder, would you do your job part-time if that was an option? And is that an option?
So before my new role and my new boss, I think I could have done everything in a part-time capacity. I was already able to get the vast majority of things done. So, for example, when I took maternity leave for my daughter, I planned out and scheduled all of my marketing activities and had it all working behind the scenes where my boss only had to do 2 or 3 things every week. So we didn't actually hire anybody while I was gone. I had built it up and planned it out. So when I took my maternity leave, everything flowed like normal. So in that old position, I think he would have easily have said, yeah, no problem. We can do part-time and keep everything the same because everything that I was doing, I was getting done in that short time frame. So it would have been fine. This new role with my current boss, probably not. I don't think they have the flexibility. I'm eventually most likely going to have to get to that point and have those discussions. So we'll see how it goes, but I don't know if they will accept it.
I mean, you never know, especially if you're a valuable employee and they really want to keep you and think that the work that you're doing is valuable, they might try to make it work. And I mean, I'm there with you. Like, I feel like a lot of the work that I do, I could do. Okay, I hope none of my bosses are listening to this, but I feel like I don't have a whole lot to do. I work very quickly and efficiently, and I've done that for years and years. And so what might take another person a week to do takes me like 2 days to do. I will say I could probably ask for more, but I don't really want to at this stage in my life. I like the fact that I can step back and maybe do a little bit of the deep work, either whether it's like for my side hustles or if it's for my actual job, because I'm actually working in like some AI technology that's quite interesting. And so doing some research on that and being able to do that, and it's not some task that I have to or project that I have to complete, is nice. And so I'm really trying to not ask for more. But on the other hand, now I feel, oh, am I not being productive enough? I wonder if they might make it work, because I bet you're a really awesome employee. So I bet they'd probably make it work for you. I'm really curious that in 2 years, when you guys pull the trigger, I'm totally going to bring you back and ask you what happened.
I will definitely share. And if it becomes earlier, I'll let you know too. But going back to your point about getting your work done in less time, I am in the same boat. I'm wondering if it's our age or our thought process, but when you work hard and you do the work faster than other people, why should you have to take on essentially another person's job because you can do it efficiently? Why can't you do your work and immediately go home? And so if it takes you 2 days to do it versus the full week, why can't you take that time away? Instead, you're made to feel bad about it and try to ask for more work.
Yep.
Like that, it's insane to me, but I feel the same way. And I think that's part of why I can do so many like side hustles and have so much energy for the other things, because I'm really passionate about the work that I do, that I can do it efficiently and like fast, because I'm not wasting a lot of time.
Yeah, same. And I took some processes that I put into place in different areas of my life, and I put them into place at work as well. And that's also what's making everything quicker. It's little things. I mean, and like I said, I've always been like this. I remember doing a marketing internship. I'm not in marketing now, but I did it when I was like exploring in college what I wanted to do. I think I was like, I want to say 19 or 20. I was very young. And they would give me something to do, and they would think it would take me a week, and it would take me like 2 hours. And it was because these people in the marketing department were a lot older. They weren't as technologically savvy as I was. And even though this was like 2006, 2007, where the internet was like, it was around, of course, but it was not as amazing as it is today. But it was still like, I had knowledge and processes and things that I could do that they didn't understand. And so they were like, you're already done. I don't have anything else for you to do. And I was like, okay, well, what other projects are you working on? What are you doing? I can help there and there and there. And then I do all of that really fast. And a lot of the time in this internship, which was like full time, 40 hours a week during a summer, I was reading a fantasy novel, because I had nothing to do. I mean, I would go to every single person in the marketing department and even people outside of the department and ask them for things to do. And I would finish it so fast. I felt the need to do more and exceed expectations. And I feel like our generation and the one before us, Gen X as well, feel the need to prove ourselves with how productive we are. And we aim for the exceeds expectations versus the meets expectations. But I'm here to tell every single one of us, including you and me and everybody in the audience, it is okay to meet expectations only. It is okay. It's fine. You are still a whole human, and you are still worthy. And I'm telling myself that, and I'm telling you that, CJ, and I'm telling anybody in the audience.
I saw that Instagram reel that you posted.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So anybody who's not following me on Instagram, I posted this reel a few weeks ago because I had a VP of my department. I'm new at my job, like 3 months in, and I asked him, so how am I doing? And he's, yeah, you're meeting my expectations. And it just stabbed me right in the heart. Now, he's a little bit older than me, so I wonder if he was like, no, you're doing well. And he just said it in a way that was just really not great. And he didn't realize that. But yeah, I felt so dejected, even though he was saying it as like a good thing. And yeah, I made a reel about the fact that I made this realization. I think I was in the kitchen 24 hours later cooking something, and I just popped up my head from whatever I was doing and thought to myself, it's okay to only meet expectations. And then I just went back to chopping vegetables or whatever I was doing. And so I was like, I need to make a reel about that, because I'm sure there's so many people out there that feel the same way. And there was a lot of views and everything. So anyway, yes, we are all whole people no matter what we do. And there's this one woman that I follow on Instagram who said, your job is not the most interesting thing about you. And I was like, yes, you're right. It's not, and it shouldn't be. We're so much more interesting than that. And I think all of these interviews that I'm doing have proved that so far. Every single one of these people has proved that they are way more interesting than any job that they will ever have.
When you're doing so well and being such a high performer and like getting things done so quickly and still exceeding expectations or meeting expectations, like that should be good enough. Like you shouldn't have to ask for more or do more. Take the time to step back. Don't feel guilty.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's burnout culture. I think it's what corporate America wants us to believe so that we'll be their little productive monkeys and they can hire less of us and pay us less. And if they keep up that pervasive thought process of, oh, you have to exceed expectations rather than meet them, then they will get what they want. More productivity for less money. And I'm done giving into that. And I think we all should be. Anyway, I actually want to know a little bit about anything that you might be struggling with in your life right now. Like we're talking about the burnout and everything that comes with corporate America. And it doesn't have to obviously be anything like that, but it makes me think that all of us have something that we're struggling with, whether it's small, whether it's big. So I'm wondering if you can share with us anything that you're struggling with right now that we can learn from what you're dealing with.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest thing that I'm struggling with currently is trying to take a larger step back and not hustle so hard. I had talked a little bit about it earlier with the Extraordinary Life event that we were at, and how ultimately your focus and your goals help define where you are and what you're planning to do and where you want to go. And I want to get there like tomorrow, not a year from now, not 2 years from now. And I have been in this hustle mindset of getting to getting to this flexibility, getting enough money to not have to worry or feel bad about spending. And what I've come to realize is that I really don't need any more money. We have our emergency fund, we have our safety cushion. I shouldn't feel bad about spending money if I find value in the item that I want to spend. I shouldn't have to work so many extra hours to earn some extra money so we can get to five faster. Instead, I should start to slow down and actually take some of that side hustle time and focus it more on my kids, or actually look at getting a part-time job instead of this full-time job, or have that discussion about going part-time with my current role. Because most likely they probably, to your point, they probably would accept it. I'm just afraid. And I wouldn't be earning so much less money that we couldn't make things work and get my free time now versus continuing to push hard and make it happen 2 years from now when I'm quote unquote comfortable. And so I think that's my biggest struggle and challenge right now is defining what enough is and feeling comfortable with making those next steps and those asks.
I'm curious, what are you afraid of in asking your boss or your job about going part-time? Like, what's your biggest fear about that?
Getting let go. They just be like immediately, nope, you know what? You're not committed and like you're fired. And deep down, I know that's nearly impossible. In no world that would actually happen. They see me as a high value employee and I work really hard for them. Like it's a 1% chance, a 2% chance. But I am like, if that happened, it could ruin all of our other plans.
But would it really ruin anything? Would you not be able to get a job right away? Do you not have enough in savings? You probably have enough that even if I don't even think it's a 1% chance. I think it's a 0.0000001% chance that they would fire you, but I think that you would be okay. And I haven't even seen your numbers, but I've heard you talk about it and I know how much of a saver you are. and you've got all these side hustles. And I feel like you could lean into some of them a little harder to make things work if you were really that worried. Like, I think you would be fine. And I think you should just go and tell them that you're going to work part-time. That's what I think. That's what I think. Not that you asked my opinion.
No, you're completely right. And my husband and I have always had these plan B, plan C, plan Ds, especially early on in our careers when, I mean, we were never at that point where we were living paycheck to paycheck, but we had coworkers that were living paycheck to paycheck and they were afraid of losing their job. And they were like, I don't know what I would do tomorrow if I lost my job. And my husband would come home and tell me that he was having this conversation with a coworker. And he's like, well, here are the 4 places that I would apply to if I lost my job. I could work at this place tomorrow because I know they need people. And I worked with them like 2 summers ago. Or if I really had to, I could move back home and work on the family farm for a certain period of time. And we had all of these like contingency plans upon contingency plan. And we still have those today. If I lost my job and we needed to do something, we have 6 options of part-time jobs that we would probably do. And it's just the fear of most likely change and doing something that's scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Fear is a very powerful emotion. I'm a huge proponent of therapy. I've talked about it in previous episodes. I personally go to therapy every 2 weeks, and I started it in, I believe, 2017, and I am a completely different person now in a good way. Right. And I feel like this is something that if I were this afraid of something like this, it would be something I would want to talk to my therapist about, because there's something deeper here. And that what I worry about is that you're living, and I'm quoting from Ramit Sethi, you're living a smaller life than you need to because of this fear. And I worry that you'll let it take over and not be able to go to the zoo with your kids on a Wednesday because of it. I really hope that you can conquer this fear. I'm sure you're going to, because you're a strong, awesome person. And the fact that you have 6 contingency plans, I'm just very hopeful that you'll overcome it, and that we'll hear from you in not 2 years, but maybe a couple months, and you can tell us that you went to part-time.
Yeah, maybe after my maternity leave, I just don't go back to full
Yeah,
time
I mean,
or don't go back at all.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have the momentum.
Yeah.
You just keep not working. You've already been not
Mhm.
working for however long your maternity leave is. Might as well just keep doing it. Yeah. And I mean, I feel like that's also a springboard where jobs would probably understand if you said you wanted to go down to part-time. Now I have 3 kids. Like, I want to spend more time with them. I do still want, I love my work and it's meaningful. But now that I am coming back from maternity leave, I'm understanding that I think going part-time will work better for me. I feel like any logical human being is going to understand that, especially with that catalyst that you have a kid or just had a kid. I feel like the real fear sometimes comes from people who don't have any of those catalysts, and they're just like out of the blue go to their job and say, I want to take a sabbatical because I want to go travel in Southeast Asia for 6 months. And the job's like, what? Well, there was a woman who presented at Camp 5 Mid-Atlantic who she got to keep her job because she just went through all of the HR policies and was like, which one of these is going to work for me for my 3 months? She took a 3-month sabbatical. And yeah, and they made it work because they liked her so much. And there was no catalyst there, and she was able to do that. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to stop trying to
Yeah.
convince you. I just want you to quit your job so
Well,
badly.
what's really funny about this is I work with Jillian Johnsrud, and she has the mini retirement cohort and group coaching, and it's all about taking that time away. I think the person at Mid Atlantic was actually part of one of her coaching courses. And that's all that it is. Part of the course is, or part of the workbook and what she talks through is figuring out what is most important to your company. What do they value? And explaining that and selling the reason for a sabbatical or for a time off and creating that logical justification for your boss to say yes. And I just need to do it for myself.
Yeah. I mean, you'll work up to it. I think you'll work up to it for sure. And like you said, I think it'll probably be easier once you have that momentum after having a kid, that it's like you're already stepped away and they've already made contingencies for replacing what you were doing at work. Like they're already in that mindset of CJ's not here. So I think it's going to work out. When's the baby due?
In December.
All right. So we'll check back in what, February, March? See?
Yeah. I think it's got 12 weeks, somewhere in there. So
nice. Yeah. That's a nice maternity leave. Awesome.
Yeah. It's definitely not bad.
Yeah.
I've had worse.
Yeah. Sidebar, my mom, obviously she had my brother and I in the 80s. And when she had my brother, she had to go back to work after 2 weeks of having him because they were like desperate for her to come back. They were like, we have to have you back. We have to. And she gave in. And I was like, 2 weeks? I feel like you're not even fully healed at that point. Like she didn't have a C-section or anything, but I still feel like there's probably something going on down there that's not happy. You just pushed 8 pounds out of your body. So I was like, dang, the 80s were rough on women. Dang. Yeah, this is 1989. So anyway, side note. Okay, I want to know, now that we've heard about your struggle of wanting to step back, what are some of your wins right now? Let's end on a high note.
Yeah. So one of our current wins, so you and I had talked about this maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 weeks ago. One of our goals was to buy a truck. So we've been saving up money to buy a truck. And part of that is to further extend our combat robot business and help us grow with that. But it wasn't like the process of savings and doing all of that. And we actually bought it like 4 months sooner than we were planning. We found a very good deal, and we are moving up a lot of the combat robot business activities that we had planned for the back half of the year. A lot of that is increasing in speed, will increase eventually in income and all of that too. So we're like, we need to do this now so we can grow and expand and network today, because we were a single family car. And so now my husband can actually travel more. And luckily we have the flexibility with grandparents and things like that to help watch our kids while as he travels and I work from home. So that is our huge current win. Was we were expecting to get this vehicle in November, right before the baby is born, and we got it in June.
Nice. That's awesome. Did you buy it all in cash? Or I'm sure it's not brand new, right? It's probably used because we're in the FI community, and how dare we ever get a new vehicle?
It was bought used, and we bought it for $20,000. 10,000 of it we already had saved. And because my parents are extreme savers, we asked if we could use them as our lender versus going through the bank, because I realized like our bank interest rates were extreme. And so I was able to negotiate a 3% interest rate with my parents.
Oh, I think that's so funny. Parents charging interest rates. My mom paid off part of my student loans, and now I'm paying her back. And she did the same thing. She just rolled the interest rate like into the like full amount, and just, yeah. Anyway, I was just like, I think it's so funny. I'm pretty sure all my payments right now to her are the interest. I'm pretty sure I paid off all the principal by now. Oh God,
Well,
that's
it
funny.
was one of those things, because my dad was like, well, our high yield savings account is giving us 5% right now. And I'm like, yeah. So
Thanks,
yeah,
Dad.
we negotiated.
Thanks for your generosity.
We
Yeah.
appreciate the ability to quickly lean in on this opportunity to get this good deal.
One of my goals in life is to be able to buy a car in cash. My last car I financed, but I mean, this was back when rates were like in the 3s and 2s. I think I got mine for 2.4 or something. It was super low, and it was a Prius, and I think it was like $9,200 for the Prius. It was 5 years old. Definitely a FI car. I still have her. I love her. I hope she lives forever. But I would love to be able to buy a car in cash. That's like the ultimate goal, because I am not a saver. Like when I say saver, I'm not a cash saver. I will chunk so much money into my brokerage, my HSA, my 401k, and my IRAs. Like I will do that all day long, and I will invest every single penny into the stock market. But I hate having cash. I hate it so much because I'm a spender. If I see a big old chunk of cash that's just sitting in a savings account, I'm like, yoink, let's go to Ireland. Yoink, let's go to Italy. Yoink, let's go to this fun fair thing in Charlotte, North Carolina and stay the weekend. I will spend it. I mean, I'm spending it on stuff that I really want to do, but I will spend that. I will spend that money. So I have a goal in the next year to save $20,000 in cash because that's how high my savings rate is. Like I can do it. I could probably do it in 6 months, but it tears me apart inside to not invest that money because I feel so behind. It's so funny because you're like, oh, I'm too much of a saver. And I'm like, oh, I'm too much of a spender. Let's like swap. Let's like Freaky Friday for a week. See if we can rub off on each other. That would be fun. So we're coming to the end of our time. We've been chatting for a really long time. I love this. And by the way, y'all in the audience, like CJ and I are kind of buds. So that's why you're hearing more of a like giggly, funny type of conversation happening right now. So I hope you guys enjoy. But we are coming to the end of our time. So the last thing that I would like you to share with us is if you have a life hack recommendation or learning that you'd like to share with the community. And if there's any other thoughts you'd like to leave us with.
Yeah, ultimately, the biggest hack I have is house hacking. Whether you own your house and rent a room or you have a duplex and rent the other half, like house hacking makes life so much easier. And it's one of the things that you can do in almost any situation. And it's such an easy, convenient way to earn extra or gain extra, especially it's far more easier when you're quote unquote young and in your 20s. So my husband and I bought our first house when we were 24, and literally everybody that we were basically the house that people moved to when they moved to the Twin City, Minneapolis area. We came from a very rural area. They would come to our house, live with us, start their real jobs or like real corporate jobs, and then eventually move out. And we did this for five years. So we were never paying our mortgage. Like that rent paid our mortgage for us. And we still own that house today and rent it out. And it was such a huge kickstart and it was fun. Like having roommates is fun.
One of my best friends is somebody that I met because I Airbnb'd to her back in February. And we just hung out and went to a farmer's market this weekend together. And yeah, you can meet some really cool people when you're house hacking. And for anybody who doesn't know what house hacking is, that's you buy a house and then you have a roommate, or if it's a duplex, triplex, fourplex, whatever, you live in one of the units and rent out the other units. And you get to a point where hopefully the rent you're getting from that person can either cover some or all of your mortgage.
It doesn't matter your age. I mean, I have a couple of friends who are in their early 50s that are married, no kids. They have a roommate and they're like, this person also watches our dogs when we're traveling for work or whatever. It is such an easy way to do it. And I love house hacking. It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it too. And I mean, there's some people who are like, oh, I don't want a stranger living in my house if I have kids and stuff, which I totally get. But there are sometimes houses, like I said, that you can buy that are like the duplexes or the triplexes. Or if you don't have that in your area, you could look for a house that has the mother-in-law suites. And if it has its own entrance and there's a way to block them coming up to the main house, then they're living there with you, but they're not coming into your space and they have their own space, but they're still contributing to the mortgage, which is awesome. It's actually something that, like, if one day I have a detached garage in the backyard right now, my boyfriend is using it to store 3 of his drum sets and all his climbing gear. But eventually what would be nice is making that into an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, where we could rent it out either on Furnished Finder, which is the traveling nurses website, or Airbnb or whatever. But it would be like this cool, I guess, tiny house, even though it's a garage, that could attract people to the area. And we have like a fully fenced in yard that it's behind this really tall fence, and you get like this cool garden. Anyway, it's something that I would love to do because I'm like, man, if I did that in 5 years when rents are going up a little bit, I could probably have my full mortgage covered and still live in the house. How cool would that be? I'm 37 and I'm still thinking about house hacking. It's just a really great way to just add on to your income in a very, I wouldn't say fully passive, but definitely more passive than starting a business or something, especially if you're living in the same house that they're living in. Like the maintenance and the repairs and stuff are things you would do anyway. So it's not a big deal. It's not the same as owning a property and having to go out or hire somebody to go and do stuff or manage it or whatever. Yeah, I love house hacking.
And to your point, like I'm 34 now and we will have 3 kids. And we're talking about converting our basement into a like small rental and renting our current house that we live in as another way to house hacking and gain some additional income, because we know other people in our area are doing it, and they're renting that for the mortgage. It's insane. There's tons of options.
Yeah, for sure. I know Paula Pant, like she did this when she was younger and she basically just had $0 in a housing payment. And that's how she was able to save something crazy, 80% of her salary or something. I was like, dang, I don't know how possible that is today with the housing market being so crazy, but you could still get somebody in there paying part of your mortgage, which is better than none of your mortgage. So yeah, that's a great hack. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, thanks for coming on, CJ. Is there anything else you'd like to leave the audience with before we log off?
I really think that if you're in the FI community and pushing really hard, I just want to reiterate that pause and enjoy the journey. You will get there, and you probably, to what we have talked about and to my own personal realization, you might be a lot closer and can do the things that you want to do today. So pause and think about that, being able to take the time and do your own thing.
I love that. That's a perfect way to end the episode. Thank you so much, CJ. I'll put all of the links to everything that you mentioned, all your side hustles, the Etsy store, the game, the Midwest Robot Combat Association, and then your own combat website. All of that is going in the show notes. Everybody can look you up and maybe join in on your robot fights. Thanks for listening to the Everyday 5 podcast. If you're loving the show, here are some things you can do. Number 1, subscribe in your favorite podcast player and share the show with your friends and family. Number 2, please leave a review. I'm always looking for ways to improve the show. Number 3, check out my website, everyday-fi.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and leave comments for myself and the guest. Number 4, if you're interested in sharing your own financial independence story, you can find a submission form at everyday-fi.com/podcast. And finally, number 5, join my Patreon membership for only $5 a month at patreon.com/everyday5podcast. This is a one-woman show, so every little bit counts. See you next time as we continue to go down the path to financial freedom.